€900 a month in Germany does not feel like a budget. For many pensioners, it feels like a triage system where rent, food, and medicine fight each other every week. That number matters because Germany is a rich country with a famous welfare state. Yet, a pension of around €900 is still a believable reality for many retirees. The people most exposed are often women, low-wage workers, migrants with partial contribution histories, people with long caregiving gaps, and anyone whose working life never followed a stable full-time pattern. So this story has two parts that need to stay separate: the pension system on paper and the lived monthly maths that pensioners actually do once rent and pharmacy costs arrive. We will start with the structure because Germany's pension system was built around career stability. Then we will move into 4 representative pensioner profiles showing how fragile old age can become. Germany's retirement model is usually described as 3 pillars, and the first pillar is still the center of gravity for most people in old age. Pillar 1 is the statutory state pension, financed largely on a pay-as-you-go basis, which means today's workers and employers fund today's retirees through ongoing contributions. The standard contribution rate is 18.6% of gross wages, split between employee and employer, which sounds solid until you remember that low wages and interrupted work histories mean low future benefits. Pillar 2 is the occupational pension, meaning employer-sponsored retirement coverage, but coverage is uneven and tends to be much stronger in larger firms and stronger career tracks. Pillar 3 is private retirement saving, including personal savings, annuities, and subsidized products, yet this pillar works best for households that already had money to spare during working life. That structural detail matters because inequality during employment does not disappear at retirement. It often hardens into permanent differences in old age income. Germany's retirement age is moving to 67 for those born in 1964 or later, and that shift reflects the same demographic pressure running through almost every pension debate in Europe. There are fewer workers per retiree than there used to be, and the working age population is projected to shrink sharply over coming decades, and the system has to stretch across longer retirements. Now add one more uncomfortable number: Germany's future net replacement rate from mandatory pensions alone is roughly 53% for a full career average earner by OECD comparison. That means even someone with a relatively standard contribution history does not simply retire into financial ease, especially in cities where rent and daily costs kept rising faster than comfort. The national averages can also hide the problem if you hear them without context, because average pensions sound larger than the cases most viewers are worried about. Official 2024 Pension Atlas figures showed that for old age pensions, after at least 35 insurance years, average monthly pensions were about €1,809 for men and €1,394 for women. Those are already not luxury figures, but they still do not capture people with weaker records, shorter insured periods, low-paid work, or years spent outside stable formal employment. And even inside those averages, the gender pension gap remained large, around 26% in 2024 by OECD comparison, though it is lower than it used to be. That gap is not abstract. It reflects decades of caregiving interruptions, part-time employment, lower wages, divorce, and labor market patterns that followed women into retirement. Housing then turns a modest pension into a severe one. Official household data showed tenant households in Germany spent on average 27.8% of income on rent in 2022. Newer tenants spent even more, which means the date of your housing contract can matter almost as much as the size of your pension check. This is why pensioners who own their homes often feel far safer than pensioners who rent, even when their monthly pension numbers look only moderately different on paper. A pension can sit above a statistical poverty line and still feel emotionally insecure because what matters day to day is not the gross figure. It is what remains after fixed costs. That is where the phrase surviving on €900 becomes real, because once warm rent, electricity, groceries, and medicine are paid, the rest is not comfort money. It is glasses money, co-pay money, winter heating surprise money, birthday trip money, and the emergency cushion that is always too small. To show how this works, the next 4 voices are representative composites built to match real pension levels and present-day living cost pressure. While the system facts come from official reporting, The first profile is Ingrid, 76, widowed, living alone in the rural area, and her monthly income lands almost exactly on the title number. Ingrid receives €846 from the statutory pension and €57 in housing support, bringing her total monthly income to €903. Her warm rent for a small flat is €425. Electricity takes 49. Groceries take 215. Medicine and copays take 43. Phone and internet take 31. Local transport costs 29. Clothing and household basics take 28. Church, coffee, and social life get only 18. And the emergency cushion is what? Remains at €65. That adds up to the full 903, which means Ingrid is not really planning a month. She is assigning each euro to a function before anything goes wrong. Her way of describing it is devastatingly simple. Well, I do not think in months anymore. I think in supermarket trips. That line explains more than any headline about pension policy, because it shows how scarcity shrinks time and attention down to the next immediate purchase. When her glasses broke, she waited 6 weeks, not because glasses are optional, but because replacing them threatened the food budget. She also limits routine specialist visits to roughly one a year unless something feels urgent, because each copay starts to look like a direct trade against groceries. This is the shape of insecurity in a country with public health coverage, not American-style catastrophe bills, but constant pressure from small costs that never feel small to the person paying them. The second profile is Klaus and Renate, age 73 and 71, a retired couple in Eastern Germany whose total income looks better until you watch how fast it gets used up. His statutory pension is €1,082. Her statutory pension is €612. They also receive a small occupational pension of €180. Total monthly income, €1,874. Warm rent takes €760. Electricity is 74. Groceries for 2 are $3.90. Medicine and health extras are 96. Transport for 2 is 82. Phone, internet, and broadcasting fees are 68. Household and clothing take 70. Support for grandchildren and family gifts takes 55. Their appliance repair reserve is 80. Their listed monthly total is €675, leaving €99 for irregular expenses, but that number is far less reassuring than it first appears. Dental work, birthdays, winter heating surprises, and a train trip to see family can swallow €99 almost instantly, especially for a couple trying not to isolate themselves socially. Klaus and Renate also carry a hidden housing strategy that says more than their bank statement. They keep the guest room cold in winter and mostly use it for storage. Heating the whole apartment feels irresponsible to them, which is a powerful phrase because it shows how scarcity rewrites the meaning of ordinary comfort. Their own line captures the misconception outsiders often have. People hear couple and think double income. It is not double comfort if both pensions are small. That sentence also hints at the limits of talking about averages. 2. Pensions do not automatically equal security if both career histories were weak or interrupted. The third profile is Mehmet, 68, living on the outskirts of Berlin and still working part-time in a supermarket because retirement alone does not cover what life costs. His statutory pension is €978, and his part-time job brings in another €450, giving him a monthly total of €1,428. Warm rent is $690. Electricity is $58. Groceries are $255. Medicine is $36. Public transport is $58. Phone and internet are $34. Clothing and work shoes cost $35. Debt from old household purchases still takes $62. He also sends €90 to family abroad. His reserve is $110. That leaves nothing magical in the picture. The pension does not provide retirement freedom. It provides the base layer that makes continued work barely possible. Mehmet says it plainly. My pension is not retirement money. My pension is the amount that lets me keep working. The hard part for him is not the job itself. The hard part is pretending to younger coworkers that the job is optional, when in reality it is. Stabilizing the entire budget. This is an increasingly important old age pattern in Germany and beyond. Work after pension age is sometimes described as active lifestyle, but the monthly arithmetic often tells a harsher story. For people like Mehmet, continuing to work delays the moment when a broken appliance, rent increase, or family obligation pushes the finances fully out of balance. The fourth profile is Brigitte, 69, a former care worker in southern Germany living with chronic illness, which adds another layer of pressure because health needs are regular, not occasional. Brigitte receives €1,006 from the statutory pension and €160 from a small private annuity, bringing her monthly total to €166. Her warm rent is $540. Electricity is $52. Groceries are $25. Medicine, co-pays, and compression supplies are $87. Transport is $42. Phone and internet are $32. Insurance and small subscriptions are $41. Household items are $29. Her reserve is $11.18. And that completes the entire monthly picture. Brigitte's own line is one of the sharpest in this whole story. I worked in care for decades. Now I compare pharmacy receipts before I compare food prices. The emotional detail behind that line is just as revealing. Late in the month, she skips social invitations because one cafe outing can destabilize the medicine budget. Again, this is not dramatic insolvency in the cinematic sense. It is a steady narrowing of options where social life, preventive care, and small pleasures become the first things cut. Put these four lives side by side, and three pressure points jump out immediately: rent, health-related extras, and food flexibility. Rent is usually the first and biggest fixed cost. Once housing is expensive, the pension stops being a general income and starts becoming a mechanism for protecting tenancy. Health costs in Germany do not usually explode the way they can in the United States, but copays, dental gaps, glasses, mobility aids, and supplies still hurt. Food then becomes the flexible category after social life, which is why pensioners often manage budgets through supermarket strategy, discounts, timing, and cutting treats before basics. Another pattern also becomes obvious. Women are disproportionately vulnerable because the gender pension gap reflects lifetime labor patterns, not one bad month in retirement. Caregiving years that once looked morally invisible inside family life reappear decades later as smaller pensions, less cushion, and greater dependence on housing support or family help. Couples are vulnerable in a different way. Their total income may look respectable in a headline, but if both pensions are small, shared living does not remove every risk. A couple can still face heating decisions, dental delays, and travel. Isolation, especially if they try to support grandchildren or maintain family ties across regions. Working in old age is the third major pattern. In public debate, this can be framed as productive aging, but for many retirees it is a stabilizer, not a lifestyle statement. That tension matters because policy language often sounds cleaner than lived reality. Incentives to work longer can mean continued labor prevents late-life financial stress. So why do some German pensioners feel poorer than the national averages suggest, even when they are not in the very lowest bracket? Part of the answer is technical. Average pension figures are often gross numbers, not what feels emotionally available after every living cost is paid. Another part is psychological. Retirees compare themselves not only with others, but with their own former life, their own expectations, and the ordinary dignity they assumed work would buy them later. Inflation then compounds everything. Food, energy, and rent inflation make a static pension feel smaller every year, even when the formal pension amount has not collapsed. A pension can therefore be above a threshold, below comfort, and permanently surrounded by anxiety all at the same time. That is why the current pension debate in Germany is so intense, because almost every reform proposal is trying to solve two problems that pull in different directions. One side argues that the statutory pension remains the main income source for most retirees, so allowing the pension level to drift downward will push more older people into insecurity. That camp also points to measures such as child care credits and mothers' pensions as partial corrections for older structural injustices in work and family policy. The other side focuses on sustainability, arguing that too much burden is being shifted onto younger workers and taxpayers as the ratio of workers to retirees worsens. That reform camp talks about more years of work, more funded saving, stronger occupational pensions, and a willingness to question whether 67 will remain the ceiling forever. Current debates include stabilizing the pension level around 48% through 2031, equalizing child-raising credits for children born before 1992, and strengthening incentives to work beyond pension age. There is also a constant push to improve occupational and private retirement saving, although those tools remain hardest to build precisely for the workers who most need future protection. This is where the system story circles back to the personal story. A pension model built around stable careers will naturally reward stable careers. But more and more retirees are reaching old age after lives shaped by part-time work, migration, caregiving, low wages, divorce, health shocks, and fragmented contribution records. That gap between system design and life reality explains why a rich country can produce both decent average numbers and deeply fragile monthly budgets. It also explains why 900 euros has such emotional force as a title number. It is not the national center, but it is close enough to many real cases to expose the pressure. At 900 euros, one broken pair of glasses is not an inconvenience. One extra train ticket is not a small expense. One pharmacy month is not background noise. Every choice starts to feel reversible except the fixed ones, and fixed ones are exactly the choices pensioners control the least: rent, utility pricing, and health needs. Ingrid's supermarket trips, Klaus and Renate's cold guest room, Mehmet's part-time shifts, and Brigitte's pharmacy-first arithmetic all show the same underlying pattern from different angles. Old age insecurity in Germany is often not one dramatic collapse. It is disciplined, careful, socially quiet narrowing. People manage, they delay, they compare receipts, they keep reserves, they work longer. They accept less heat, fewer outings, fewer appointments, and smaller margins for error. And because they manage so carefully, the pressure can remain politically invisible unless someone asks what the month actually looks like after the pension arrives. That is why interview-style stories matter as much as macro statistics here. The contribution rate of 18.6% tells you the system's financing method. The average pension of 1,809 euros for men and 1,394 for women tells you something about broad outcomes after 35 insurance years. The 27.8% average rent burden for tenant households tells you why housing dominates so many budgets. The gender pension gap of around 26% tells you why women remain disproportionately exposed. But only the monthly lists tell you what survival feels like on the ground, where 18 euros for coffee in church or 65 euros for emergencies can decide whether a pensioner feels human or merely solvent. If one sentence captures the whole issue, it is this: Germany did not build a bad pension system so much as a pension system designed for stable working lives that fewer retirees actually had. And when old age arrives after unstable decades, the gap gets paid in smaller flats, later glasses, colder rooms, extra shifts, and lives organized around the next supermarket trip. If Ingrid, Klaus, and Renate, Mehmet, and Brigitte made the German pension debate feel real, watch the next economics and society video on this.